Have you ever experienced a glitch in the Matrix? Well, if so, consider sending it my way. Just go to astheravendreams.com and click the button to do so. And of course, thank you. I submitted a minor glitch story earlier, but this one is somewhat different. I'm not quite sure if this qualifies as a glitch or as some other kind of paranormal event. I can't quite categorize it, but it happened a little over 10 years ago, and it still confounds my wife and I to this day. So, when my first son was about a year old, he was a relatively disciplined but light sleeper. He'd dutifully take his naps and go down at his designated bedtime, but you had to be careful not to wake him up, as he was not a heavy sleeper. My wife and I had just finished watching NFL Sunday Night Football, so we were up pretty late, about 11:45 EST, and we were getting settled into bed. We checked on our son, brushed our teeth, and prepped for bed as we do every single night. Lights out, and we were both eyes closed and somewhere along the journey of falling to sleep. Out of nowhere, with no build-up or warning, a loud, piercing, high-pitched sound erupted all around us. It was very much like what you would consider an alarm tone, but it was not like what our CO2 monitors or our smoke detectors sound like. Those alarms are even more high-pitched and they pulse, like beep, 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 obnoxiously. This manifested as one loud, steady, completely unwavering tone. My first instinct was confused disbelief. My eyes bugged wide open, but my body didn't move. I waited to see if my wife would react, but she did not. As I shot straight up, though, she immediately followed suit. "Do you hear that? What the hell is that?" I asked. "I have no idea," she responded. My first reaction was to go across the hall and check on my son. Strangely, he was completely asleep and unfazed by this loud noise. A little panicked, I began to run around the house, desperately looking for anything dangerous that may be causing this. Fire, etc., and also trying to locate the source. I ran around the house like an idiot for several minutes, and I never found anything. The smoke detectors were inert on every floor. We have a first floor, second floor, and a finished basement, as were our CO2 detectors. And as I said, we know that they don't make that kind of sound anyways. We don't own a burglar alarm or anything of that sort. After a few minutes, the sound stopped as suddenly as it began. As my wife and I tried to gather our wits and make sense of what had just happened, an odd thing occurred to me. I went into every room on every floor of the house, trying to figure out what the heck was happening. As I did so, the tone, volume, and other characteristics of the sounds were constant. They never faded, muffled, or grew depending on where I was. It was like the sound was just omnipresent and had no specific source. Now, I have tinnitus, and this is not like that. I definitely know the difference between an internal ringing in my ears and this. Also, my wife experienced this as well, so it definitely was not in my head. Also strange was that my young son never stirred in his sleep. That incident would have been weird enough, but it wasn't the end of this story. The same thing happened again about 3 months later. This time, my wife and I were again in our bedroom, up late, but this time watching TV with the lights on in our room. Our son was again asleep across the hall. The noise hit again, this time around 1:30 a.m. We are night owls, and we were up late watching a movie on a weekend. Having experienced this once already, I was, I guess you could say, more prepared for it this time. I immediately got up and first, of course, checked on my son, who was once again dead asleep and somehow unfazed by this loud tone surrounding us. I went quickly around the house, more aware and less panicked this time, trying more to investigate and observe than do a safety check. As before, the sound was omnipresent. I can't think of another way to describe it. In every room on every floor. There was no discernible source or location, it was just everywhere equally. This time I opened up the hatch to our attic crawl space, and I used a flashlight to look around up there, thinking perhaps the sound was coming from there, or that maybe there was some kind of device left behind from the previous owner causing this. I found nothing, but I noted that the sound was as equally present up there as it was in our basement, and everywhere in between. It was just everywhere. It also occurred to me this time to listen outside, and, you guessed it, the sound was present outside my house as well. Again, with no obvious source or direction. Just after checking outside, after about 5 total minutes, the sound abruptly stopped, just as it had last time. A little concerned now, I actually called the local police. I live in a small New Hampshire town, and my house is set 100 yards off of the road, and you can't see any neighboring homes from our yard. But we do live on a dead-end street with about 8 other homes in our neighborhood. The officer shows up and we tell him what happened. I told him we were concerned that maybe a neighbor's house alarm had tripped or something, despite the fact that the nature of this sound would make that unlikely or impossible to have that as a source, especially given that this was late winter and all of our windows were closed. And the officer was polite, but indicated that he'd had no other calls or complaints, and no indication that any local alarms had been tripped or anything else of the sort. He said that he would go up and down the local neighborhoods a couple of times to be sure that nothing was off, which I knew was polite and diligent, but not going to produce any answers. We never heard the sound again. I asked neighbors if they had heard anything, and nobody had an answer. We knew the previous and only other owners of the house, and they indicated that they had no alarm systems or anything like that we wouldn't know about. It was 10 or so years ago, and we never heard this sound again, and we still have no rational explanation for its source or its meaning. It wasn't a huge disruptive incident, but it completely defies any attempt to explain what happened. If anyone has any information or thoughts on this, please let me know. I have a short but incredibly weird glitch that happened to me and my roommate that we genuinely cannot explain. It's not the craziest glitch in the world, but it's one of those things that, after it happened, we both just kind of looked at each other like we were crazy. This happened about a month ago, back near the end of the year. It was the week between Christmas and New Year's. My roommate and I both work retail jobs at different companies, and on this particular night we were both exhausted. It was my first day off since Black Friday, and he had been working 10 hours a day for the last 2 weeks. It was around 5:30 in the evening, and we were talking about what we wanted to do for dinner. Because we'd both been working a lot, we thankfully had a bit of money saved up. So, we decided that, on that night, we weren't going to make dinner. We were going to order pizza. We're both guys in our mid-20s, so to say that we can each wolf down a full pizza, it's an understatement. We sat there and kind of debated what to get, when I had the brilliant idea of, how about we each get a whole pizza for ourselves? Like, a whole large pizza. It was one of those ideas that was so obvious that I was feeling like a literal genius for saying it. So, that's what we decided to do. I wanted a Hawaiian. Don't judge me. And he wanted an all-the-meats kind of pizza. We then also decided that we would get a large order of their cheese sticks, And I put in the order, paid for the whole thing, and we waited. The delivery guy showed up, and we excitedly grabbed our food and took it to the kitchen. And around here is where the glitch occurred. The delivery driver gave us 2 large pizza boxes and a medium box, one for each pizza, and then I guessed that they used a medium box for the cheese sticks because they are pretty big. My roommate dropped the boxes on the counter and opened the medium box. Cheese sticks, check, as expected. He then opened the first pizza box, and it was my large Hawaiian pizza. We both saw it. He saw the pineapple and said, "Ew," jokingly. I confirmed that it was mine and it was correct, so I closed it, grabbed the box, and I took it to the living room. He grabbed the last box without opening it and followed me in. When he sat down and opened it, he let out a disappointed grunt and a couple expletives or two, and I asked him what was wrong. He mentions that they messed up the order and that they gave us 2 Hawaiians instead of a Hawaiian and his all-meat pizza. I knew that that was going to be an issue since, obviously, my roommate cannot stand pineapple on pizza, which I get. I set my box on the coffee table and looked over, and sure enough, it was a Hawaiian. I told him that I would go ahead and call them to see if they could send the correct pizza. I get up, grab my phone, and start to dial the number. I start explaining to the person at the store that there was a mistake with our order when my roommate tells me to hold on. I glance over at where he's standing at the coffee table, and he motions towards my box, the first box that we opened and verified was a Hawaiian. Sure enough, it's now a meat lover pizza. He reopens his box, and it's the Hawaiian. I apologize to the person at the pizza place, and I tell them that we must have made a mistake and that everything was there and perfect, and hung up. It wasn't until I hung up that it occurred to me that this was impossible. He opened the first box. We both saw the Hawaiian pizza, pineapple, and ham. I grabbed it to take it to the living room. He had first opened his box when we sat down, and it was also a Hawaiian. We both saw 2 pizzas with ham and pineapple, but somehow the pizza I had grabbed was now his all-meat pizza. It's not like you can mistake a Hawaiian, again, just ham and pineapple, with a pizza covered in sausage, hamburger, and pepperoni. They look nothing alike. We kind of just stared at each other like, how the hell did that happen? But after a while decided that it was what it was. And we dug into our dinner. I don't get it. I don't know how the pizza changed, but I assume that it was just a situation where the Matrix rendered the wrong pizza the first time and corrected it when we weren't looking. So, I guess, thanks to the Matrix for fixing our pizza problems. The setting for this, the mid-1990s, on a rural road in South Mississippi. It was springtime, just a few months before we were to graduate high school and leave everything we ever knew behind. My best friend's dad owned a used car dealership. The previous week, he had gotten a small, sporty Mazda convertible. His dad liked to give his new cars a week or so of running around to make sure he wasn't selling any lemons, so he gave us the keys, and he sent us off to give it a test drive around the rural back roads of the Pine Belt, with a heartfelt promise from both of us that we would be safe and definitely not speed or drive irresponsibly. A promise we kept to the next intersection before zooming out of sight. We'd been driving around for about an hour before coming to this one section of 2-lane highway that ran through a floodplain for a small muddy water creek. The road was on an embankment, so it wouldn't flood every time that it rained, so there were steep 15-foot high drop-offs on either side of the road. So there's no pulling over to the side of the road if you were to break down on this section of roadway. The stretch that we were on was straight, but had a small hill that crested at about the halfway mark of this half mile or so of asphalt. We'd been enjoying our freedom and broken promises to his dad, and this particular moment was no different. We quickly ran up to a car that was very likely going the speed limit, but they were driving way too slow for us in that little Mazda. My friend and I looked at each other with a grin. He downshifted and gave it plenty of gas, eager to leave the slower car in our dust. As we crested a hill, a blur of metal appeared in our lane, barreling towards us at an alarming speed. We weren't even 100 feet from the other car coming straight at us. I distinctly remember the driver in that car bracing himself, his eyes wide, knowing that his options for avoiding collisions were 0 to none. My best friend and I yelled, "Oh no," in unison as I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable collision. There is no way that we could have missed that car. I saw the driver's eyes. He was so close. Impact was inevitable. Except the sickening explosion of metal crunching against metal at high speed never came. I opened my eyes and looked to my left. I saw my friend's arm nonchalantly resting on the door, his mouth open as he sang along to the Gin Blossoms' Follow You Down. It was a beautiful day. The roof down, the radio blaring, not a car in sight. Not even the one that we attempted to pass. I blinked a few times, looked again to make sure I was believing what I was seeing. Not wanting to hear my friend gloat about how awesome of a driver he is, I didn't ask him how we avoided the other car. He didn't even seem fazed about it. I'm a skeptical man, but that incident was one of two things in my life that I simply cannot explain. In our 30s, when we happened to find ourselves in the same town one evening, we met up for beers. Between asking about our careers and family, I brought up the incident again. Remember the time that your dad gave us the Mazda to drive around, and how we almost hit that car? He thought about it for a second, and I saw the blood drain from his face. "Holy hell," he said. "I remember that. What the hell happened?" I told him that I didn't know, but I had hoped that he would have filled in the blanks. I felt an ice-cold chill run up my spine. This past year, he brought his family to my town for a vacation. They came to my house for dinner, and I wanted to tell our wives the story and have him tell his side of it all. This time, my friend seemed to have no recollection of it, as if his mind had been completely erased of the experience. Even when I reminded him of our previous conversations about it, he looked at me with a blank stare as if he had never heard the story before. And so, the mystery of that near accident on the back roads of Mississippi remains unsolved. A strange and inexplicable memory that haunts me to this day. A mystery that seems to get stranger as the years go on. I have a glitch that happened to me the other day that I cannot seem to get over. I know that sounds dumb, but it's eating at me, and I'm personally struggling to move past it because it makes no sense, and I don't understand how or what exactly happened. I don't want to drag this on too long, so I'll get right to it with very little in ways of context here. The only things that I think you need to know are that I'm 17, I live with my parents, and I do not have my phone charger near my bed. I know that to some people, that may sound weird, but I've been trying to peel myself away from my phone a bit, since being a teenager in modern times has me a bit attached to my screen. And I read that a good way to do this is to have a place to charge your phone that is away from where you can reach it. So, because of this, I have my charger on my dresser, which is over by my door, and on the opposite end of my room from my bed. If I need to use my phone for whatever reason while it's charging, I have to get up, walk around 6 full steps to my door, and use it over at the dresser. It's actually done a good job at getting me to use my phone less, if anyone cares. Anyways, the other day I was in my room doing my homework when my dad knocked and came into my room. I asked him what was up, and he asked me if I had seen his text that he had sent me. He commonly sends me messages with quick questions if he's feeling too lazy to come upstairs and ask me. I said that I hadn't seen them because I was nose down and I grabbed my phone from where it was sitting on my nightstand. I opened the text and read it. It was just him asking me what I wanted for dinner, and he also sent me some silly meme gif. I chuckled at the meme, and then told him that I was open to whatever he and Mom were going to make, that I didn't want anything specific. He stood there at my door and we chatted about a few things. He asked me about my homework. I mentioned that it was for my economics class, and that it was pretty easy, but I was just really focused. He asked me about other things with school, and we just had a bit of a quick chat. Nothing too crazy. As he was about to leave the room, I started to hear the sound of my phone vibrating, like I was getting a phone call. I looked down at my bed where I thought I had tossed it, but I couldn't find it. My dad then looks over at my dresser and makes a snide comment about how it was my boyfriend. He then picks up my phone from my dresser, unplugs it, and walks it over to hand it to me. Said that he'll let me know when dinner was ready, and then he left. I just held my phone and tried to figure out how it ended up plugged in and on my dresser. It made no sense. I had looked at it when my dad entered the room to see the meme and to respond to his question. Yet, when my boyfriend called, it was over on my dresser and somehow plugged in. Also, I was the only one between the two of us that realized that something was off. When I mentioned it to my dad, he kind of just shook his head and said that he thought it was on the dresser the whole time. I mentioned that I had read his text, and I had replied to it while he was up there. He says that he actually asked me the question when he walked in, and that he didn't recall me ever having my phone. It was really weird. I swear I had looked at the text and the meme because I knew what the picture was. I remembered what it all was, but I had somehow not seen it prior to when he handed me my own phone? It was like my phone teleported to the dresser, but also reset the timeline to make it that it was always over there. I really don't know what happened, but I'm very open to interpretation from your listeners because it was freaky. Okay, so this isn't anything earth-shattering or particularly significant. It's actually just kind of a quirky thing that happened that most would think of as completely insignificant, but it really did happen. And there really is absolutely no rational explanation for it that I can figure. It's a true story and not something I made up to be entertaining, but it's an odd and, I guess, somewhat playful glitch. So, I decided to meet my sister for breakfast on Friday. I was off, and as she works in the car business, Friday is her regularly scheduled off day. We're both in our 40s, parents of young kids, and reasonably professional, pragmatic people. We live about 45 minutes from each other, so we decided to meet at a Midway restaurant that is about 30 minutes from my house. I live in a pretty rural town in New Hampshire, and it's about 30 minutes from anywhere, but you get used to that pretty quickly. These details may seem unimportant now, but they actually factor into the story. Anyways, it was an average weather morning for January. There was some light precipitation, alternating mist and very light snow, and some breeze. My journey to the restaurant consists of about 15 minutes of winding back roads, 10 minutes of main roads, and a quick 5-minute run on the highway where you basically just travel to the next exits about 1.5 miles away. I arrived at the restaurant first and was sat in a window seat overlooking the parking lot. I could see my vehicle, and I could see my sister pull in and park across from my truck. She came in, and we spent almost 2 hours catching up, talking about family, all the usual stuff you would do with an adult sibling. After we finished eating and paid our bill, we decided that we had stayed long enough and that it was time to head out and get on with the rest of our day. We walked the short distance to my truck, but we were still chatting away. And the weather had improved while we had been eating, so we stopped at the tail of my truck to continue talking for a while. I was leaning against the tailgate, and we were just about to wrap it up when my sister noticed something strange resting on top of my bumper, right below the tailgate, and just above where the license plate is generally mounted. She pointed and said, "Hey, what's that?" I looked, and there was a small, thin, triangular shape. It was a light gray with a dark gray top. "Huh, it looks like a Lego," I said. I reached down and picked it up, and sure enough, it was a little light gray Lego with a darker gray Lego piece attached to it. What's really odd is that it was the same color and style of Lego that my young son was using to assemble a Lego Star Wars vehicle that he had gotten for Christmas. At first, I didn't think much of it. I did think it was strange that there would be a tiny Lego in the dead center of my bumper on a Friday morning, but whatever. We said our goodbyes, I pocketed the Lego and headed home. On the ride home, I thought about how odd it was to have found this thing on my bumper. It really made no sense. If it was a random thing on the ground, why would someone pick it up and place it so carefully on my bumper? It was so small, less than an inch square, it likely wouldn't even have been noticed. And even if they had, I likely, but not for certain, would have noticed someone messing around near the back of my truck, as we were sitting right next to the window. Alternatively, if it had somehow found its way there back at my house, there is no way that it would have survived a 30-minute drive down windy, bumpy New Hampshire back roads and stayed there as I drove 60 miles per hour down the highway. These Legos barely weigh as much as a sheet of loose paper. It would have more than likely not have even survived the trip down my 100-yard-long dirt driveway, let alone the entire journey to the restaurant. When my sons came home from school, I showed my 8-year-old the piece that I had found and asked him if he recognized it, and if it went to his Star Wars vehicle, as I remember helping him sort the parts out weeks ago, and the vehicle had many pieces of the same color and style. He said, Yes, I think so." Further intrigued, I asked him to go get his now fully assembled vehicle from his bedroom. He and his older brother went off and returned with the vehicle. They showed me an area on top of the vehicle where this piece belonged, on the left side, opposite its complementary piece which went on the right side of the vehicle, which was already there and properly attached. So this Lego indeed came from my house, and was part of this particular build. Even stranger, my son told me that when he was building this Lego after Christmas, he had dropped this piece on the floor. He had gotten down from the bar stool that he was sitting on and looked for it, but it was completely gone. He couldn't find it. And my older son confirmed that he was enlisted to help look for it, and neither of them could find it. But it was clearly missing, and the incomplete build was proof of that. It was more of an aesthetic piece than something essential to the build. So, as I said, this isn't necessarily a candidate for a blockbuster Twilight Zone episode or anything, but there is absolutely no rational way for this to have happened. The Lego piece had inexplicably disappeared at my house, unknown to me at the time, by the way, and somehow strangely reappeared 2 towns away, perfectly placed and centered on my truck's rear bumper, where I just happened to be lingering around talking to my sister, where it could be noticed. 99 times out of 100, I never would have noticed it, because I would have gone directly to the driver's side door and just driven home without inspecting my bumper. So that makes it even more odd. I have a young cat who's really smart and really naughty. She's allowed outside during the day, but she's also afraid of birds, so she prefers it if me or my partner are outside with her. However, she really wants to be out at night, and she knows that she's not allowed. She used to try to bolt if the door was opened for even a second, but we wised up to her and now she tries to be stealthy. It doesn't work on me because I've got her number, but my partner can be oblivious sometimes and she'll take the opportunity to slip out. I like to read, smoke, and drink on the back deck at night, and there's a huge glass paneled door that she can jealously watch me through. Sometimes she stays by the door the entire time, especially when the moths are out. But sometimes she gets bored and goes to her spot on the couch. And now, for story time. One night, I'm out reading and drinking, and I hear a soft thump on the deck. I look up, and there she is, that little rat. I start scolding her for being out at night, assuming that my partner accidentally let her out. And she ignores me, doing her usual routine of standing up on her haunches and smelling this particular spot on the wall. It's an unusual posture, and it looks really funny and distinctive. As I'm still scolding her, she meanders under the table just out of my reach. I look under, but she seems to have disappeared into the shadows. I know that she'll eventually want to come back in, so I don't pursue her. That just makes her stay away. So I get up to go in and refill my drink, and berate my partner, and what do I see? She's in her spot on the couch, completely passed out asleep. I start yelling for my partner, and she wakes up slightly, looking at me through drowsy eyes. I saw her outside less than 2 minutes ago, and my partner said that they hadn't gone out at all recently. I wondered if there was a cat who looked like her, but she's so distinct down to her extra hangy primordial pouch and silly little quirks. And clearly the cat outside knew me and was comfortable enough with me. We also don't have many strays around here because we border the wilderness, and they can't survive. I know all of my neighbors' cats, and they definitely don't look or act like mine. Was she astral projecting? Was I seeing into the future or the past? Or does my cat have a doppelganger? So that, my dear friends, was this week's collection of Glitch in the Matrix stories. A collection of weird stories involving things that were awkward, strange, and unexplainable. Especially the pizza one. How do you get two Hawaiians and have one turn into a meat lovers? It's crazy. Also, controversial opinion. I may lose a few subs for this. There's nothing wrong with pineapple on pizza. If it's what you like, it's what you like. I like Hawaiian pizzas myself. I like putting pineapple if I get a barbecue chicken pizza. It kind of just adds the sweet to the savory, and I personally enjoy it. I have no personal connection to that story. I just wanted to throw out my controversial opinion and see what happens. You know, it's what YouTubers do, right? We put out our controversial opinions, cause controversy, and we just kind of make chaos. Hell yeah, chaos. Anyways, hopefully you all enjoyed these stories. If you did, please do hit that thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel and liked what you heard, hit the subscribe button. You can also do super chats, or super thanks, I guess, or Patreon or memberships, where you get early access to my content. Yeah, and all that stuff. If you haven't noticed, my voice is mostly back. Not quite 100%. Probably close to 85-ish, somewhere in there. We're getting better. Drinking a lot of water. A lot of tea. Haven't had a whole lot of caffeine lately. Did have coffee this morning, but haven't for a couple days prior to that. We're doing well. We're doing better. We're getting better. Life is good. 2023 will continue. Now, let's move on to the final parts of these videos where we talk about the word of the week. On the screen right now, and a few moments prior to this exact moment, is the visual that shows all the beautiful people who left me comments with last week's word of the week. All of these people went above and beyond, left me a comment with the word, and as such, they get a visual shout out on the screen. So, thank you to each and every single one of you. You're all incredibly amazing. I think I said last week. It was actually 2 weeks. No, it was last week. I'm wrong. Don't listen to me. Ignore me. Yeah, thank you. All of you. You're amazing. Let's move on, though. This week's word of the week is... That's right, it's knock. K-N-O-C-K. That is to make a pounding sound. To strike something with a sharp blow, to collide with something, or to find faults. Patience is trying not to laugh really hard over there. The last one, you could say, like, don't knock it till you try it kind of thing. Like pineapple on pizza. Don't knock it till you try it. She's gonna lose it. She's pretty good at this, though. She can sit there and listen to me do these and not laugh until after I hit stop. So let's wrap this up. My friends, I'm happy to be back. I hope you're all happy to have me. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, you're all loved, you're valid, you're important, you're the best you can be. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. And until I see you again, friends, much love and sleep well.